Welcome to today's episode where we are joined by the incredible Dr. Eva Selhub. Dr. Selhub is a globally recognized physician, author, and speaker specializing in resilience, stress management, and the powerful connection between the mind and body. With her wealth of experience and unique perspective, she has helped countless individuals transform their lives, overcome challenges, and achieve optimal well-being. Prepare yourself for a fascinating conversation packed with wisdom, inspiration, and practical strategies to empower your mind and body. Dr. Eva Selhub, up next. Dr. Eva Selhub, thank you for coming to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here. So my first question to you is, this is with respect to your personal journey and inspiration. What inspired you to combine Western medicine with Eastern healing traditions, and how did that shape your career path?
It's a really good question, and mostly because I was always influenced by sort of the Eastern traditions, but sort of put it aside. When I decided to go into medicine, I said that was what I was going to do, and I was going to become a pulmonologist and work in the intensive care units, and that was it. And then in 1996, when I was training at Boston City Hospital, we had a huge number of patients that had HIV. Back in 1996, there was, nothing you could do about it. And I, unfortunately, was working on a patient and, the patient moved and the needle went into my finger with massive amounts of blood, HIV-infected blood. So I was one of the first people to be tried on a cocktail of medications to prevent conversion. So that was 6 weeks of taking 14 pills a day. That made me very sick at like 27 years old.
Oh.
And so I went through this horrible distress for 6 weeks of a lot of crying and poor coping skills, of wondering how I was ever going to work, because who's going to hire me if I'm sick, and how I'm going to go pay back my $250,000 worth of loans, and who's going to love me now I'm single. And that really pushed me over the edge, was like the death of without love.
Yeah.
And despair. And so during that course of 6 weeks, I kind of did my bargaining. And I said, okay, if there is a God and you let me live, I promise I'll work with the underserved. I promise I'll be kinder. I promise I'll take care of the needy. I promise I'll be a better person. And 6 weeks went by. I did not convert to HIV. So I said, okay, I have another year of testing. But during this time, I'm going to keep up my part of the bargain just in case. I don't want to get punished for promising something. Right. So, and that's what I did. I just said, I'm changing the course of my career. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'll start with primary care. I'll figure it out. And I changed my track, my last year of residency, and was all set to start on this new path. And then my dog died and my grandfather died. And somebody started harassing me that I had to take to court. And then my apartment actually burnt down. I lost everything. I didn't have renter's insurance, $250,000 worth of loans. And
how did you get out of this? Honestly, just hearing this.
And this all within 5 months, and I'm not even done. Because I have to move back home. Fortunately, my parents were local. I had to move back home. And my father, after a week of moving back home, had a heart attack. He's alive, but he had yet another heart attack. So when that happened, that was the last and final straw. And I just shut down. And I just thought, why? Why me? Why me? Why me? And I just said, I've tried to look at this from different perspective. Every time I've been knocked down, I get up and I say, I'm going to do it differently and I'm going to be better. And why me? Why me? Why me? I just had no desire to live. I had no energy to live. I wasn't going to take my own life, only more so because of what it would do to others. Yeah. I would have been quite happy for just some truck to run me over and just end it. I was so tired and so depressed. And I was basically a walking zombie for 5 months.
Oh, geez.
And, living at my parents' house with the choice of 28 years old. And then I don't know. I don't know what happened. I just know that a friend took me out to dinner and she said, we miss you. You haven't been the same since the needle stick. And it's been almost a year. And we want you back. And I don't know what happened. I just kind of sat there and contemplated. I was lying in bed and I thought, you've been asking the wrong question. You've been walking around saying, why me? Why me? Why me? As if you've been victimized by life. And the truth of the matter is nature just as soon lets a forest fire burn as a flower bloom. It's not personal. And you're taking this personally. The question isn't why me, it's why not.
Right. Right.
Right? There's all kinds of catastrophes that are happening all the time, and they did not happen to you at that particular time. So they all happened to you in the 1 month period. So what? And it wasn't like a so what, like not to have compassion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what if life happens and how you deal with it is up to you? It's your relationship with your perceived reality that matters.
Well, this hearing this story, it's gut wrenching. I'm just getting emotional just hearing and knowing what you went through. But this definitely shaped your resilience, did it not?
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
that's what started me on the course of saying, I need to figure this out. I need to figure out why I walk around feeling victimized as if life is happening to me, because it's really happening with me. And I need to figure out why I have such low self-esteem to think that I'm being punished and that there's something wrong with me that I need to have to do better and
Yeah.
be kinder. Always like thinking that I'm reward punishment issue here. I need to figure out how to manage, how to cope more effectively. And there's more to medicine than this. And so that's when I decided I was already got a job in primary care working at a Harvard hospital. And there was the MindBody Medical Institute, which was run by Herb Benson, which is an institute that provides patients as well as done research in the mind body applications, which are meditation practices, psychology practices, nutrition, exercise, spirituality, the sort of the gamut of what an individual can do for themselves to heal, along with, and it was scientifically based. So after volunteering there for a year and learning these about all these things and applying them myself and applying them to my clinical practice, they asked me to be the medical director. So again, sort of this young person, 28, 29 years old, going, okay, how hard can it be to be a medical director at a Harvard affiliated hospital, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
So that was sort of on the job learning. And I sort of did primary care and I worked as a medical director and I started finding patterns, taking all the research that was out there, looking at psychoneuroimmunology, which is the connection between your psyche, your nervous system, and the immune system, the mind body interventions, bringing it all together to develop an expertise in the application of stress and stress physiology and the mind body application and how it could reverse disease and activate the body's natural ability to heal itself.
So
But
you
it still wasn't enough because, I felt like, you know, there's just so much I can do in my clinical practice. And that was that point where they were changing the model over to what it is today. This
mm,
intensive model and I was like, a day I have to look at my patients' as numbers is a day that I have to leave. And they were changing that and they were going to dock my pay if I didn't work faster, harder, all that sort of thing.
yeah.
I quit my job. I was literally living paycheck to paycheck, working part-time as a medical director. And then I started studying these alternative healing modalities, energy medicine, Chinese medicine, whatever I could get my hands on. I would read a book or follow a practitioner around, and then opened up my own practice in 2003, merging everything together. Because for me, the problem with medicine, the Western medicine model, is that it's a victim model and that you come in as a victim and give all your power away to somebody who says they can fix you, which they can't because you're the only one that can fix yourself. And what you need is support and guidance and love and the tools to enable your body to heal itself. And that's what we then find resilience in all those aspects. So that's what I did. It was basically coaching in a practice. And eventually I said, well, this isn't enough because, you help one person and then they start changing, but then they go back into their toxic environment,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether
Right.
it's their home or their work. So it's very hard to sustain. So we need to have a bigger impact. So where do people spend most of their time? At work. I'm going to move it into the workplace and start working in that place, especially working with leaders to change culture and create resilient leaders, a flourishing culture. So then that's going to influence everybody else to do the same.
Yeah.
And during this time, I wrote several books. I was already being brought in as a speaker, which is my thing that I love doing most. And so that's how one thing led to the next. And everything gets merged. So for me, life is medicine. There's no separation between anything.
Definitely not. So let's just go back to talk about more about the mind body connection for a second, because I know there are a lot of misconceptions about that. So, what are the most common misconceptions about mind body medicine?
Well, first of all, there's the first misconception is that the mind and the body are separate. And the other misconception is the mind, body, and the spirit are separate.
Mm,
And so that are If you want to be successful, you don't need to worry about this whole kumbaya stuff.
Right.
You don't have to worry about the mind and the body. You just go and be successful. And there's a failure to understand that an organization is an organism, and an organism needs to be able to adapt and survive on this earth. And in order to be able to adapt and survive on this earth, you need to be able to manage a stress and a stress response effectively. And mind body medicine addresses the stress response so that that stress response is being utilized effectively throughout your life. So it offers you flourishing and resilience versus burnout and sickness. So if one isn't aware of that mind body connection, the latter can happen. Was more likely.
Definitely. Yeah. So you're saying that your emotions, your beliefs, your thoughts impact or can impact your physical body.
Everything is connected. Everything's connected. Your thoughts, emotions, beliefs affect physical body, and your physical body in turn affects your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. Okay. So when you're feeling anything, so we are sentient beings. Before you have a brain, before you can walk, before you can talk, you feel. First and foremost, you've got senses that allow you to engage with the world, to let you know what's happening so that you can adapt appropriately. So your hunger signals tell you you're hungry. You don't have the ability to fix that when you're a baby. You learn how to fix that later on. You have the ability to sense that you're cold, but you don't know what that is. You figure that out later, and you figure out what to do about it later. In the beginning, you need other human beings to help you stay afloat, stay alive. But the first thing you have is feelings. And what happens is if we're not in tune with those feelings, with our emotions, our thoughts, our sensations, physical or otherwise, we're not listening to the signals of the body that's letting us know that we're in stress so that we can then correct it. So when you're having a physical sensation, it's because something else is going on. When you're having an emotional sensation, it's often associated with something physical going on. It's connected through that stress response and a signaling mechanism that's letting you know that you're out of balance. That's how your brain knows that it needs to do something different. It's through signals.
So let's talk again more about the resilience and stress management, because there's a lot of stress, whether it's stress from work, it's personal stress. We all deal with stress differently. A lot of us internalize it and it manifests into something else. So what does resiliency truly mean to you beyond its textbook definition of it?
Well, I want to answer that, but I also want to just actually allude to this idea of stress first.
Okay, sure.
Stress is detrimental based on the perceived stress. So stress is part of life. Like I've said, hunger is a stress, being cold is a stress, not having enough information is stress. So stress is when there is a situation of lack within a balanced system, right? Every system wants to be in balance. We call it homeostasis. Every living organism wants to get into a steady state, a state of balance, which is impossible to maintain in a living, breathing, dynamic system, which is constantly changing. But we're changing in order to get back into balance, right? You shift positions because you're uncomfortable and you want to get comfortable. You eat because your body's low in your blood sugar, so that now the blood sugar can get back into balance. So everything we do, it doesn't matter what, it's because it starts from a situation of lack that we're trying to fix. So that situation of lack is called stress, which if we didn't have it, we'd literally be dead. You need it.
We do.
You need stress. You need stress to wake up in the morning. You needed to put food on the table. You needed to shift positions. You needed to alert you to put on something warm. You need it. So the perception becomes a problem when there's a perception that a stress isn't manageable. Okay, because what happens is when there's a perceived stress, the stress response is activated, which is a physiological response that basically involves every system of the body, primarily using stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. That's activated. That creates symptoms. The symptoms then are noted by a brain that has a database of what you've done before, and then you do whatever you need to do, get out of that bad situation so that you can get back into balance. So adaptive coping mechanism would be, my blood sugar drops, physiological response occurs, symptoms arise from that, which are hunger or fatigue or shakiness. I know what to do now. My brain has a database of what is done before and what's worked. I go do it. The blood sugar is taken care of, and now I'm fine. I'm back in balance. We call that adaptive coping. Okay. So now that stress response was necessary because it alerted me that I needed sustenance. Without it, I wouldn't have eaten. I would have starved. Okay. So stress is good.
Yes. Okay.
Now, a maladaptive coping mechanism, which means it's not conducive for my survival in the most positive of ways, is I'm anxious and I eat. So the food, which is comforting, can raise serotonin and dopamine levels temporarily, which helps me feel better temporarily so that I can cope with whatever's going on in my life. But it's not actually solving the problem.
Right.
So the problem itself, which might be obtuse and unclear, might be related to my belief system, is still triggering that stress response, which means adrenaline and cortisol are still flying around the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which causes increased heart rate, blood pressure, muscle tension, digestive system shutdown, hormonal imbalance, inflammation, a dropping of serotonin and dopamine, all these physiological changes, which are really good for us in the short term, but not in the long term. So if that response keeps firing, it's not being taken care of either because our lives are full of perceived stress that's unmanageable, or it's just our own belief system that keeps getting triggered. Eventually, the system's going to poop out.
Right.
It's going to burn out. So that's why going over to your question about resilience is the definition of resilience is the ability to bounce back to original form after adversity. That's true for pretty much everybody.
Mhm.
We don't necessarily bounce back into original form, but everybody's bounced back. Life has been hard for everybody.
Yes.
More so for some than others. Everybody's born resilient. Getting out of the womb is hard. Many babies didn't make it before the advent of modern medicine. So that's difficult. So the fact any baby who made it out of the womb and made it into age, whatever, 3, 4, 5, 6, was resilient. So the fact that we're all here means we're resilient. Now the question, there's levels of resilience, sort of like a bell-shaped curve.
Yeah.
So we've got the sort of the midline, and then we've got burnout here and flourishing here, where we can have sick or we can have fit, and then well's in the center. Okay. Most people are over here near burnout and sick. Why? Because they're not aware of what's all the different stressors that are happening that are perceived that most of us are creating in our minds that aren't actually real. Your brain doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. It's still back in fight or flight, running away from saber-toothed tiger days. So if it's a perceived stress or threat that isn't manageable, it thinks you're being chased by the saber-toothed tiger and
Right.
goes into fight or flight mode.
Right.
That keeps going. Eventually, you're not going to have the wherewithal, the tools, the energy to fight infection when it comes or to fight a big trauma when it comes. You're not going to have the wiggle room, the resources to do so, as opposed to someone who's fit or flourishing. So the ability to not only bounce back to original form, which obviously not so easy to do as we age. We're going to get less resilient as we age. When we fall, we break a bone versus bounce back like when we're a baby. But to stay as pliant and flexible and adaptable as possible so that not only do we bounce back, but we get better. That's where we get to flourishing. That's where we get to, like athletes, hormesis. We get stronger, better, faster, happier. So that's my goal, is to get more people on this end of the curve.
Yes.
So that no matter what you're doing, your performance is that much better.
So a question for you. Does anxiety and stress, do they manifest in the same way?
Well, this is again, that we just sort of step back and say, stress is a term of physics. We're not going to attach anything to it.
Okay.
Right. So what we want to think of it is distress, right? Ease versus disease. So the goal is to be in ease, viable, flexible ease, right? But when I'm in stress or when I'm perceived unmanageable stress, in distress, right? I'm in disease or distress. So it's emotional distress or
Yeah.
psychological distress, right? Versus something that's just kind of okay, or what we call eustress, which is kind of like just baseline. So anxiety is the experience of perceiving a stress and feeling helpless about it, right? That I have a situation that I can't handle or believe I can't handle, I can't control, and I'm going to die. That's what the brain is saying.
Right.
So being able to step outside of our emotions, when we're in an emotional state, it will pull us into that. It pulls us into that fight or flight, in a negative emotional state. And trying to stop that is like trying to stop a shiver when it's cold outside. So the key is to get the nervous system into safety mode. When we get the nervous system into safety mode, the brain then perceives I'm okay.
Well, but how do we do that? How do we help people, I guess, personally reset when they feel overwhelmed or burned out? How do we do that?
Right. It's a great question. And not as difficult as most people think. You think like, well, how do we do that? That seems impossible. Well, now you know why they tell you to breathe and why they tell you to meditate and why they talk about mindfulness. This is the method to madness. Okay. The method behind the madness, or the reason behind the method, whatever you want to call it, that when you do these types of activities like breath work, grounding exercises, being out in nature, cognitive restructuring, whatever that may be, what you're doing is you're stepping outside of what's happening
Yeah.
and you're getting into that physiological state. Remember, we said that the physical can trip up the emotional, and the emotional can trip up the physical. So it's very difficult to change the emotional, but we can change the physical. So if you can get that sympathetic nervous system downregulated, activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our nervous system that says, I'm okay. Then you now have access to reasoning. You have access to love. You have access to support. You have access to being able to then problem solve and being able to now have that emotional intelligence to say what's really going on here. Because when you're in that negative emotional state, you're like a 5-year-old
Yes.
having a tantrum. Okay. It's just really difficult to get out of it. And you can't reason with a 5-year-old. So the first thing you want to do is to just take a pause. And there's different techniques that one can do to, to do the nervous system regulation, whether it's deep breathing, there's tapping, there's grounding exercises. Like I said, there's all different types of tools that we can learn in the moment to start slowing down that stress response, to regulate that nervous system. The second thing that's really, really important is self-compassion, right? So we tend to say, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I screwed up. I should be at peace. I was feeling so good. And then this happened. Just remembering you're human. And
Right.
remember that the person that's reacting right now isn't your adult self. It's your 5-year-old self. So just like it's not a good idea to yell at a 5-year-old and tell them, oh, be quiet. We want to have self-compassion for ourselves. And that's what's going to actually be able to switch that fear response into what I call the love response, which is the title of my first book, is shifting into that physiology of love through our connection with love. That will again help us, like what we do with the baby. You love
Yes.
them, help
Right.
them calm
Right.
down. So self-compassion, self-love. And then once we get into a place that's more quiet, we can now reassess and reappraise. What's really going on here? What is the belief system that's logical or not true? How can I perceive this differently?
Well, Dr. Eva, I was actually going to talk to you earlier about your other book, your brain on nature, but I'll come back to that for a second. When we're trying to slow things down, and with technology, it's really hard to do that. Everybody expects everything today, yesterday, and there's no patience for that. There's no patience anymore to wait for things. So, how do you think technology and nature can coexist to support wellness?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. And I think that's what's important here is to become aware of yourself and your body and how you feel at any given moment. So you're the gauge. And if you feel like I got to go, if you wake up in the morning, I got to do, you're in fight or flight. Your brain is saying, I'm going to die if I don't do this. Is that true? And is that logical? No, it's not. I'm not actually going to die this very minute. So it's taking, and for me, I know that people are busy and they say, oh, I'm not, and if they think they're so busy, they're not going to do something. To find ways to do things quickly in a like short period of time that can allow for self-regulation and bringing the system back into quiet. So how do we do that? We can do that through technology. There's a lot of wonderful apps. There's guided meditations. There are feedback systems. You've got aura rings, all these different types of technology that can give us feedback in real time, what's happening with our stress response. They also have technology that can stimulate the vagal nerve, which is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. So technology can be really wonderful in supporting us to get ourselves back into balance. I use one to help me sleep, which is wonderful, along with my meditation. At the same time, it's remembering that the effects of, like electromagnetic frequency and just being on all the time is giving our brain the message that we're in fight or flight constantly.
Yeah.
So it's very important also to unplug and to take time out to go back to where you came from, which is nature. Our
So,
brain is meant to be in nature. It feels best when we're in nature. And when we're nature deprived, again, it goes into fight or flight. So you can combine the technology to support you while also making sure that you unplug from technology and get out in nature and just be in nature, be home for a bit.
so in your book, Your Brain on Nature, you explore nature's healing power. What are your favorite? I know you talked about some tips earlier, but what are your favorite practical tips for reconnecting with the natural world? You mentioned there's meditation. What else would you suggest?
Well, one of the my favorite practice, and it's also something that's been well studied, is called Shinrin-yoku forest bathing. So it's a technique that was developed in Japan where you're literally bathing your senses in an experience of being in nature. So you put your cell phone away, you have no direction, you have no objective, there's no place that you have to go, and you walk through nature, immersing all your senses in the experience. What do I feel? What do I see? What I sense? What I smell? What do I taste? Fully engaging in the present moment of being right here, right now, as I walk through the forest or walk through nature or walk in any type of beautiful environment. And then what happens, what they found is if people do that for 20 minutes, not only do cortisol levels and stress hormone levels drop, but your immune system also improves and it sustains itself for like 6 months later. So, yeah, it's incredible. So,
Hey, though, Doctor, even just hearing you say that, I disappeared for 10 seconds. It was just thinking about that.
that's exactly right. So, we have mirror neurons that believe that we're there when we see it. So, even having photos of nature around your house, your screensaver could be nature. I do a lot of meditations, guided meditations that involve nature. And when we're there, we can feel ourselves moving from a place of contraction to ease, expansiveness and ease. That's what happens when it's like putting a drop of morphine in your brain.
Oh, wow. So, what are the early signs of burnout that people often miss?
Probably the negative attitude, right? I think people just think, oh, I'm just stressed and I'm in a bad mood. But when you start noticing, oh, and then, most people are tired all the time and you just drink a lot of coffee. And again, in that we don't pay attention to our bodies, start missing signals that I'm more tired than usual. And if people aren't normally exercising and notice that they're not performing as well in the gym, they're not going to notice these things. I'll just drink more coffee. So between a sort of a negative attitude where everything is bad, and I say when I get persnickety and I have disdain for everybody and disdain for everything, I know that I need to go take care of myself.
Yeah.
So it's a loss of self-compassion, a loss of compassion for anything else, disdain, negative attitude, and an ongoing tiredness and fatigue that becomes a profound fatigue.
So, how can we create an environment where we're seeing people the stress is being reduced, reducing the stress and preventing any type of burnout? What can we do differently?
Well, the first thing is practice self-awareness. Starting to learn how to pay attention to your body and how your body talks to you. What does it feel like to be in a state of balance? What does it feel like to be in a state of stress? And what's different? So that's the first step, is learning to communicate with your body. How does my body speak to me? And really, it's not that difficult. What causes me to contract and what causes me to expand? What causes me to feel tight? What causes me to feel ease? And starting to pay attention to that. Then starting to practice some self-regulation tools, whether it's listening to meditations, using an app, working with a coach, whatever that may be, whatever your affordability is, but starting to learn some techniques for self-regulation. And the most important part is the self-compassion. Starting to treat yourself as if you would treat your best friend.
Yes.
Pay attention to the negative self-talk, because that's beating you down more than anything else. Start paying attention to, what is it that I really want? What is it that's going to fuel me to be at my best? That's really what we want to look at here, is what's going to fuel me to be at my best? What is taking away from me? What I recommend is that people start, one, being aware of how they feel at any given moment. Two, give themselves some self-love. And three, start looking at their lives as what fuels me to be at my best and what causes me to be at my worst, right? So either something is going to fuel me to thrive and flourish, or it's going to cause my fuel to leak. So what are those things? What foods
Mm,
are causing me to thrive? Nutrient-rich foods, because the foods we're putting in our body, much of them are toxic, which are
yes.
causing inflammation. So for me, resilience is about physical vitality. So what am I doing for my physical vitality? Am I moving my body? Am I putting nutrient-rich food? Am I getting plenty of sleep? Am I getting time out in nature? Am I unplugging and taking some time out? So we're looking at that physical vitality. That's one.
Yeah.
Two is, let's look at my emotional equilibrium. Where are my emotions? Am I mostly negative, mostly positive? What are ways that I can harness my emotions, step outside of them and develop some emotional intelligence, some emotional balance? Two, what's my mindset? Is it negative or is it positive? Am I looking at life as a victim of life, or am I co-creator of life? Being able to change our mindset to one of growth, that every situation is an opportunity for growth and learning. And it's okay if I don't feel that way. I'm going to have some self-compassion when I don't, because that's going to allow me to then get to a place that I can.
Right.
The fourth pillar is one of my relationships. Again, fuel. And my relationships draining me, or are they fueling me? And how do I start creating relationships that fuel me? How do I find support groups that can fuel me to thrive? So we want to look at our fuel as our relationships can be. Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody would live by themselves. Spiritual connection is number five. What am I doing to support my sense of being connected to something greater than? My profound connection to something greater than. It could be a purpose, it could be altruism, it could be nature, it could be a religion. What allows me to feel more connected to something greater than, which then allows me to transcend, to be able to cope more effectively. And the last pillar is paying attention to how I affect everybody else. My role as a leader, my role as an influencer, because
Yes.
whatever I'm feeling, it's affecting everything else that's around me, whether you're a boulder or you're a pebble. I'm going to create ripples in the water. And what do I want those ripples to be, positive or negative? And taking ownership for that.
Yes, completely agree. But I'd like to go back to what you said about spiritual for a second.
Yeah.
How can people who are skeptical about spirituality begin exploring it in a practical way?
Yeah, I mean, you could be an atheist and be spiritual. So spirituality has nothing to do, it has in subset something to do with the belief in a greater power or God or something of that nature, but it doesn't have to be. You could believe in quantum physics.
Yeah.
And quantum physics is a knowing that and is energy, and energy is everything is energy, and that how we perceive this energy is literally that perception, the observation of the reflection of life, and that we collectively have an intelligence, and that intelligence can be one of a vibration that is of its highest vibration, if you will, of one of connectedness, or one that's based in fear, but it's a collective. So that's one. So that's sort of a scientific way of looking at our bigger
Yes.
connection. Or you can just be altruistic or have a purpose or believe in something greater than that drives you. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a religious endeavor.
True. But in terms of holistic practices and routines, specifically yours, what does your daily routine look like in terms of wellness, and has it evolved over time?
Oh, sure. I mean, I come first. I truly believe that if I'm sick, then I'm of no use to anyone. And I'm certainly of no use to anyone if I'm dead.
Yes.
So if I really want to support others and help others and be in service to others, or do whatever it is that I do, whatever it may be, and I want to perform well, then it behooves me to take care of myself to do so. So I know a lot of people think that self-care is selfish and all these things are selfish, but in truth, that if you really want to be in service, you need to take care of yourself so that your cup runneth over. So that is truly how I feel. So my mornings are mine. They belong to me and no one else. So my morning routine is to wake up luxuriously. I have a mindfulness practice of how I wake up. Then I usually meditate, I journal. I have an infrared sauna, a mat that I get into, and I meditate in there for a little bit. I have a qigong practice and I exercise. So those are the things that I'll do in the morning.
Gratitude have a role to play in your life and
What's
your
that?
gratitude?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in the meditation practice, they have a gratitude practice. And also throughout the day, I practice mindfulness, which is, being non-judgmental aware and finding ways, what I call puffs of appreciation throughout the day, where, small little nuggets of saying, okay, what can I be grateful for? Especially when I'm in a not such a great mood and feeling irritable. I allow myself to feel that way and then do sort of a correction. And then I say, okay, really, what's the opportunity here? Where's the ability to feel grateful? So gratitude in itself gets us into nervous system regulation because that gratitude says I'm lucky, which means I'm safe. Right.
Yeah.
So I practice a highly nutrient rich food intake. So I love food and I also want it to be nutritious. And when I fall off that, I feel it drastically. My brain is inflamed and I can feel more fatigued and more irritable. So
Okay,
I
Dr. Eva, I have to ask you, what does a
uh,
typical breakfast for you look like?
so my breakfast is usually late. It often is somebody else's lunch. So, but I have my morning. I'm trying to think. Like right now, I'm doing this. It's called a gut revive thing with flaxseed, and it's got glutamine powder and a probiotic. And I usually do that in some carrot juice. And then later on, I do that before I work out. And then after I work out is when I actually will have my meal, which is usually lots of veggies, maybe with or without oatmeal, which is organic oatmeal. And I'm trying to think of what I made this morning, and eggs. It's usually what I'll do. So I usually like to have a savory breakfast with some type of vegetable and eggs, and then plus or minus the carbohydrate, depending if I've had a good workout.
It sounds great. Because you talked about inflammation earlier, and most of us eat a lot of foods that triggers the inflammation. So I was trying to have an understanding what you have for breakfast, what you have for lunch, what you have for dinner, just to help our listeners understand,
Yeah,
wanted to
ab-
start.
absolutely. And remember this, it's not about also not eating foods that are inflammatory that you enjoy. It's just keeping them to a minimum. I
Yes.
try to talk about the 80-20 rule and becoming more and more aware of how your body is reacting. But if your body is in stress already from other facets in your life, you have a smaller wiggle room of what your body can actually handle. And most people don't know that they're walking around sick because they've gotten used to it. So
Mm,
when I'm working with people, we go clean for a few weeks and they find they have all this energy and they usually fall off the wagon and then they feel badly again. But now you have something to contrast it with.
I see. Okay. So what makes resilience coaching different from traditional coaching methods?
Well, I believe that my approach is different because a medical doctor who's moved into the space of working in leadership. So that's just going to be different there because
Yes.
I'm not even a psychologist. I've had the background in psychology through the mind body training, but I'm literally coming through like the physical body space and understanding human behavior and human nature because I've been doing it for 25 years in my practice. So it's not so different. It's just that when I'm bringing that in to the coaching practice, we're looking at performance, we're looking at leadership abilities, we're looking at communication pathways, we're looking at conflict. I don't even call it conflict resolution, I called it conflict opportunity. Right. So for me, it's what's different with the way I work with people is the narrative is very different. The narrative is never negative.
Right.
It's not about you're not doing well, you failed, you're bad. It's not about that. It's looking for growth and opportunity constantly, whether it's through, again, those 6 pillars of always looking at those 6 pillars and being able to get into a place of ease and maneuverability no matter what your position is, so that then you're influencing others in the most positive light.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Are there emerging trends in wellness that you see and that excites you or aligns with your work today?
Oh, sure. Look, when I started this in 1997, I started and there was nothing. And I, was fearful of leaving my job because there was nothing else out there. And I didn't want to leave my patients because I had nowhere else to send them. And now it's like a dime a dozen. There's people doing mindfulness, and my friend and colleague wrote a book called Leader is Healer. It's wonderful. There's so much out there now that advocates for the mind body connection, for meditation, mindfulness, compassion, good nutrition, the whole sort of holistic care. So I think that's just really exciting. I still think that the approach can be shifted. Again, there's sort of the scientific basis for things and understanding it from a holistic perspective. I think that's what I'm here for, to help engage that conversation and teach. But it's really exciting.
It's very exciting. And if you could assign a single habit or practice as a prescription, I'll say, for happiness, what would it be and why?
I would say probably gratitude. I would say gratitude. Why? If people wanted to be healthy, they would be. So it's not really what people want. People want to be happy. And in our search for happy, we become unhealthy because we think that our happiness is going to come outside of us.
Yeah.
We're in constant search of, oh, if I do this, then I'll be happy. If I make $1 billion, then I'll be happy. If I get married and have 2 kids, then I'll be happy. If I lose 30 pounds, then I'll be happy. And so what happens is your brain says that if I don't have those things, I'm going to die, and puts you in fight or flight, which puts you in the maladaptive coping behaviors, which is why diets never work. And you just find yourself on this hamster wheel and not happy. If I just take a pause and become grateful for all that I am and all that I have, that understand that my value comes because I exist, not because of some external means, then I access happiness. Because the happiness is like a state. It's like the air that I breathe. It's already there.
Yeah.
But if I keep chasing it, it's never going to be enough. But if I access it as I already have it, and I can do that through that state of gratitude, I'm so lucky.
So is gratitude the one untapped resource within our lives that could truly transform our lives?
Absolutely. It's the notion that I am perfect as I am. My life doesn't mean life can't change. Doesn't mean non-action. It just means that that the locus from which I act is from here, not from here. It's not outside of me. That I am valuable and valued, and I'm lovable and I'm grateful, and I'm achieving success. As opposed to I'm only going to be those things if I achieve success. So it's really what gratitude does for us. Not gratitude itself, it's what it does for us. It brings that locus of control back inside. It brings that knowing of our value and our value system. Our core gets us realigned with our core values so that we're functioning from those core values than outside of them.
Yes, true. My final question to you, Dr. Eva, and honestly, when you're speaking, I'm grateful that you're here. If you could collaborate with one figure in history, either from
Oh,
science, to spirituality, to advance mind body medicine, who would it be and what would you work on together?
ooh, to advance mind body medicine.
Yes.
You know, I'd probably want to talk to Descartes because he sort of was the one that split the mind and body up and said that they were separate. To go back in time and say, let's have a talk about that.
Yeah.
Let me show you the science today and see how they're not separate. Because we have mental health is separate from physical health, and they're not separate. And they're not separate from spirituality, from our spiritual health. And they're not separate from our professional health. And
Yeah.
they're not separate from our relationship health. That everything is interconnected as we are landscapes of nature. With nothing in nature is separate. So I would want to have that conversation. And so we would shift the course of history.
You definitely would. Because and I said it was my last question. Sorry. I meant that was my second last question because now I have another question. Why do you think most Western doctors don't or aren't receptive to mind, body, spirituality healing?
It's a good question and something that we approached when I worked at the Institute. That was one of our missions. And the truth of the matter is they just don't know. So when they're taught source physiology and the clinical application of physiology, they buy in. They just don't understand it from a scientific perspective. It's not what we're taught. We're not taught in medical school, but once they're taught, they go, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense because it's really logical. So I think a lot of it is also how we approach Western medicine, allopathic doctors. The problem with the way it's been approached in the past, which is a problem usually also when I'm working in the executive world, is that we look at something else as not having as much value as what we have. So alternative medicine people will say, oh, well, Western medicine sucks. And Western medicine will look at alternative medicine and say, well, it's, not founded. It sucks. Where the truth is there's the value in all things. And how can we find that value and create integration where we can then create some type of precision for each individual, which is what we call precision medicine, and use the science and also use what wisdom traditions have advocated for thousands of years, bring them together to empower the body to heal itself, to empower individuals to flourish in life. And so, I think having those types of conversations are very different than the ones that have happened before, which is, trying to shove things down people's throats when they're like, we're stressed enough as it is.
And people are more knowledgeable today than ever before, right? And they want alternatives. They want alternative medicine. They want to try something other than prescription medication being shoved down their throats as well. So,
Well, I think remembering that everyone's doing their best given what they got. But there's so much more for us to know, and that Western medicine is a Band-Aid. It's not going to cure you. You have the ability to do that, but not through Western medicine. Western medicine is a Band-Aid. It's, if I'm bleeding, then I need to put a Band-Aid on. And if I break my leg, I need it reset. However, the question is, why did my leg break to begin with? Why was the bone so weak? Maybe there's something I can do about that.
definitely. Dr. Eva Selhub, what a pleasure. It was great having you on. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
It was fun. It was great. Thank you. What an inspiring discussion with Dr. Eva. Her expertise and passion for helping others understand the profound connection between the mind and body have left us with so much to reflect on and apply to our own lives. Thank you for tuning in today, and please be reminded, resilience and balance are within your reach. Until next time, take care and keep striving for a healthier and more empowered you. I'm Jackie Denise.